Kraken fans, welcome back. It's Zach Miller and Peter Hale. This is the Midtown Madness Podcast. Before we get going, thank you so much for listening. If you're watching on YouTube, hit the like and subscribe button as well as the notification bell down below so you know whenever we drop an episode. This episode and the whole season of the Midtown Madness Podcast is brought to you by 2 Men in a Garden. Whether you like it mild or hot, chunky or cantina style, people over 2 men have you covered. Pete, I got to tell you, with the guest we have on today, listeners, you're going to want to, if you're listening to this episode, you're going to want to pause it. You're going to want to go over to YouTube. You're going to want to pull up this interview. You're going to want to go over to your cabinet, grab the chips, hit the fridge, 2 Men in a Garden salsa, kick back on the couch, and watch this interview. Pete, it's an unbelievable interview. But before we get to that interview, you can pick up 2 Men in a Garden salsa or any of their products at any local grocery store or online at 2meninthegarden.com. Follow them on social media at 2 Men Salsa on Instagram and Twitter. I was very upset to learn that the Olive and Lindbergh Schnooks did not have 2 Men in a Garden when I went in there today. Very upset. I'm going to write a strongly worded letter to the manager of that store because I did not have 2 Men in a Garden this week. Pete, what we just finished this interview. Why don't you tell people who we interviewed?
So most of you, if you're listening to the show, probably know by now that men's basketball hired Chris Harriman as an assistant to replace
or
Phil
if you're
Forte.
Corey Tate, Big C.
That's right, Big C.
Yes.
Or Harry to his friends.
Yes.
Welcome back, Harry. But so it came out on Tuesday the 25th, of course, the day that we released our last episode, that he would be the new assistant coach, replacing Phil Forte. Frank asked Corey Tate about it on his show Wednesday morning, and Tate quickly he went, "Where'd you hear that?" and said he couldn't comment on anything. So of course, SLU's official announcement came out the next day on Thursday the 27th. So for those of you, and this will help too for the interview, but a little background: he was an assistant under Majerus at SLU, and then went to Nebraska under head coach Tim Miles, New Mexico under coaches Craig Neal and Paul Weir, and then he went out to Cal under coach Mark Fox, who was just let go after this season or during this season, actually. You'll hear in the interview he's got an Australian accent. It's where he's from, and so he's been something of an international recruiter throughout his career. He's got that Australia pipeline in addition to other markets. And I kind of touch on this briefly in a question in the interview, but just as kind of a heads up, there's a lot of information going around right now about what international recruiting in the age of NIL means. And shout out to my buddy Joe Weiss for kind of doing the research on this, but I'm just going to try and summarize it into something that at least I can understand. So international players don't get paid under NIL rules the same way that American players do. It's because they're 501c3 nonprofit organizations. Collectives can't pay international players directly, but they can. There's other forms of compensation, like an international trip, early season tournaments outside the U.S., return trips home to host a camp, or passive income inside the U.S. I think they just can't participate in promotional activities inside the U.S. So basically, the easier way to think of it is, they can get NIL. It just has to be
external
in their home countries, right?
Or could they do like social media? Is that passive income technically? Like what? Can they do
that's
like?
A good question.
Like, can they be sponsored by Lululemon? So like, or Fabletics or whatever. I don't know.
It would probably have to, whatever they did with that would technically have to be on their home turf, basically. So that's a little complicated, but the point is, and Harriman addresses this, it doesn't mean that international recruiting is shut down as we know it. It's still going to be happening. There's still ways to for players to get in involved in that. So it's nothing to worry about. And furthermore, SLU has boosters, prominent boosters with business interests in Australia. Not to mention we've got alums there like Cody Ellis and his dad who played in the NBL, along with other SLU alums who were there and played in the league. And credit to Brian as well for kind of bringing that detail to my attention. So just as kind of a heads up about about where all that's coming from, who Chris Harriman is, and why we're so excited to have him back and be talking to him. And I think, as you'll find out shortly, there's a lot of reason to be excited about this guy.
Yeah, we were going to do a whole big, segment where we talk about why we're excited, but for real, like, this interview is so funny, so good, so interesting. Of course, there's at least 2 Majera stories I guarantee you've never heard. So kick back, grab your 2-minute of garden salsa, grab your chips, and check out this interview coming up right now. Billiken fans, this may be one of the most surreal moments and guests we've had on this show. He's your newest old assistant coach. It is Chris Harriman. Chris, Harry, welcome back to St. Louis and welcome to the Midtown Madness Podcast.
Good to be back, fellas. I've never felt so old as what I do now. Everyone keeps saying the old coach is back, and I'm like, I'm not that old. You know what I mean? I'm not that old. You don't need to be throwing that at me. But it's good to be back. I appreciate you guys having me on, and I'm excited to be back in St. Louis.
I got to know, reading that article on the interview you did with Stu Durando, when Majerus left in the wheelchair before the game at Duquesne, and he pointed at you and told you, Coach, was it with the middle finger?
It was with the middle finger.
Yes!
It was with Zach. You know him.
Let's go.
Man, you know everything was done with that middle finger, right in your chest too, right in the middle of your chest. Yeah, you know that really well.
Oh my God,
that's
no doubt awesome.
About it. Yeah. It was a fun night. It was something I'll obviously never forget. Being in that situation, and I think I said this to Stu, I give a lot of credit to Jim Weitzel and Jim Cruz, 2 veteran head coaches that have been doing it a long time that didn't even blink. But I remember bringing the guys in the locker room and asking if they didn't mind if I coached the game, and Mike McCall and Jordan screaming out, going crazy. So immediately I drew up a lob dunk for Jordan to start the game just to keep the guys happy. So it ended up working out really well, though. Thankfully, we won the game.
Yeah, you filled in a few times, didn't you?
Only once.
Just the once. Okay.
Porter, when I was here, Porter filled in probably 5 or 6 times.
Okay.
But after he left, yeah, just I want to know. I want to know. Yeah. So I got the best record in college coaching.
That's right.
Peter spent time on the bench of multiple staff, at least two staffs, and he said, I think he said Coach Harry looked the most like a head coach in that moment. I think that's what you said, that. Right, Peter?
I think what it is I said, like, if you couldn't see the sideline, if you didn't know who was coaching, you wouldn't have known there was any change that day.
I really appreciate that.
And having sat on the bench, literally on the bench for 4 years, there were times where coaches were out or sick or whatever, and I really noticed. And I know it's a different perspective. I wasn't watching on TV.
When you have great kids on a team, which we did, and you have really strong relationships, and I'm thankful for that, and I'm forever grateful because they played hard and they were committed to it. And I think it wouldn't have mattered if I was there or whoever that night. They were going to play the same way, and that's a credit to them and who they were.
Harry, when we spoke last week after it was reported you were coming back, you said something that I absolutely did not expect you to say. And Travis actually contacted you when he first got the job here.
He did. We actually, I saw him at an AAU event, and he and I didn't know each other, and I saw him with the SLU jacket on, and I remember saying, "Hey, congrats! You're gonna love it. Like, it's the best place." And he turned around and said, "Any chance I can get you to come with me?" And it kind of stunned me a little bit. I was like, "What? Excuse me?" And he had just said, "Hey, I heard great things about you." And whether he was fully serious or not, I don't know, but it felt like it at the time. And it was one of those moments where you couldn't help but walk away and be like, wow, maybe I maybe I should turn around and go walk back and say something to him again, because this has always been one of my favorite places. And I'm thrilled now to be working for him and be back here for sure.
So where were you at the time? Were
I
you were
believe
at
I
New
was at New
Mexico?
Mexico. I
Okay.
believe I just signed a 3-year contract in New Mexico as the associate head coach there. So it was like, I believe Coach Ford's been here 7 years. Is that correct?
Right.
So yeah, so I was at New Mexico for 3, and then Cal for 4. So it was right then after I just signed the contract. So timing is everything in this profession.
It is. It is. So what, how different was it this time? I mean, how did he reach out to you? Did you reach out to him? What was the conversation like this time around?
You know, he was recruiting a kid that was leaving Cal, that I had, a kid from overseas, Lars Tiemann, his name was, big German kid, and Coach Ford and I had spoke about him a couple of times, and we had a few conversations. So we were just strictly talking about this kid. And it just happened that the way things worked, and they were bringing different people in and what have you. So he called me one morning, and I was expecting the conversation to be about that again. And he just said, "Hey, I'm having some changes on my staff. Is there any chance I can get you out here?" And obviously we knew each other, but not to that extent. So he offered me a chance to come out here and see him and spend some time with him, which obviously I did. And when I got back here and was around him, I realized not only is he a hell of a coach, but a great person. And it didn't take me long to realize that we could fit great together. And hopefully I can help him some adapt in. And he doesn't need me as much as I need him, but it's great to be back here with him, because he's obviously done a heck of a job here.
It's interesting. You talk about how you guys can mesh well together. Have you gotten any indication on like an outline of kind of your role, or is it just kind of like bring who Chris Harriman is to the staff?
Yeah, I think we're still trying to learn that. I mean, as we've talked more and learned more about each other, I'll be honest with you, it's been terrific. So we've just spent a lot of time at his house, a lot of time in the office, a lot of time having meals together and talking about everything from scouting to player development to recruiting to the current players, travel to everything. So I think I've always prided myself, as you know, Zach, on being someone that can just kind of fit in and do whatever's necessary, and whatever he asked me to do, I'll do. I don't mind what that is. I've been fortunate enough to be part of coaching the offense, coaching the defense, trying to have a heavy role in recruiting. So right now it's all hands on deck, obviously trying to make sure the roster is where it is. And that's kind of been our number one goal, at least every day since I've been here.
Speaking of recruiting, I want to kind of ask about the international aspect of recruiting right now, because I think there's a lot of uncertainty, right? Like I think a lot of fans think NIL has basically made international recruiting obsolete. Like there's a conception right now that people have that international players just can't get in on the action. And I know there's some rules about that, but my understanding is there are workarounds, like legitimate workarounds. I'm not talking about anything, shady. How do you understand it right now? Like what's the international landscape? Is it tougher now? Is it easier now? Is it more or less the same?
I actually think it's somewhat better. And the reason being, and I hate to sound negative towards, some kids, whether they're in the portal or growing up in the States, but they're kind of secluded from it. So when you have these conversations with a lot of international kids, quite frankly, it doesn't even really come up. Eventually it gets to a certain point, and you want to be able to do everything you can to help everybody benefit as much as everybody else on the team. But unfortunately, it may be the first or second thing you have that comes up in a discussion with a kid in the transfer portal. So it's kind of a breath of fresh air, if you would say. But it's also, kids can benefit. There's, like you said, there's ways around different things, and it becomes a little bit trickier. They have to do their name, image, and likeness stuff overseas, not within the States.
Right.
So there's some things to work around. It can make it a little bit more difficult, but by no means does it make it harder or more, unlikely to have international guys be part of the team.
Speaking of making recruiting a little more difficult. The funny thing about kind of this off season was in an off season where Travis has so much playing time to offer. You have an unbelievable opportunity for older guys to come up and see if they can play at this level, or guys that may want to come back down, more playing time. And now you've got this NIL wrench thrown in. Have you guys had conversations either with Travis or with, other coaches in the profession about, a team that would have a lot of capital being playing time? Now they're kind of like, well, we're all kind of screwed in a way. I don't know.
I think that the best way to deal with a lot of these things, guys, is you have to be honest and upfront, right? And too many times what people run into with their problems is, and I've seen this a lot, I've heard this a lot, it's people paying for particular kids in the transfer portal, and they spend these, godly numbers, and then these kids come to campus, and the kids that have been part of your program for 2-3 years are getting less, and you start running into problems, and you run into all these issues. It's very tricky. And it can be something you have to navigate. And obviously us as coaches, there's a limitation to what we can and can't do in regards to some of those things. But having honest dialogue is critical. Honest dialogue as a staff with the current players, with kids. You have to figure out ways that you can under promise and over deliver, because I think so much of this in college basketball is just you hear these crazy numbers, and some of it's true, but you also have to have a realistic approach and a plan. And if you don't have a plan and you're just throwing out money and grabbing guys and giving this kid that and whatever else, you're just swinging in the wind. And everybody, it may work, but chances are it won't. So we've spent all our time here since I've been here developing that plan, and I believe they have a great plan in place. They're trying to be fair, they're trying to be honest, and trying to do it the right way with great communication. So that helps a lot.
You have a preference in terms of recruiting? When you're looking at like high school prep, even JUCO players, there's a much longer runway on recruiting, years long in some cases. And now you're talking about weeks, if you're lucky, recruiting players. Do you kind of like the challenge of a short turnaround time with all the chaos and a frenzy of like all these players at once, or do you prefer the long-term sort of relationship building of, recruiting high school players?
It's a really, really good question. When I was at Cal, a friend of mine called me from UNC Charlotte, and he said, "Hey, we got this kid leaving. You might want to be interested." I called the kid at like 3:30 in the afternoon. He committed by 6:30 in the evening. He was on campus the next day, and then he led us in scoring and was one of the 5th best scorers in the Pac-12. And I was like, wow, that was pretty easy, So you have situations like that, right? I love building the relationships with kids over the course of time. The reality is that college basketball has just gotten so much older, in order to compete physically, you have to get older, not get younger. So I think there has to be that fine balance of, we have to find guys that can be part of our program, that can be a core and have that stability, i.e. like a Rob Lowe, Cody Ellis. We were fortunate to have some of those guys. You have to have those and then find the right fits. Obviously, it's an inexact science, but to answer your question, I kind of like chaos. That's kind of how my life is right now, especially with moving. That's enjoyable too, and it can be exciting, and you can find ways to really upgrade your program quickly. And as you guys said, when you have playing time available, I was once told, and I share this with players sometimes, and it can come off a little bit mean, I guess you would say, but I was once told, and this was by Coach Majerus.
Wait, hold on. You're saying that Rick Majerus said something kind of mean, but really meaningful?
This was less mean than the other things, Zach. This was less mean.
Okay.
He would point to us assistants, and he would
with
point
his
middle finger, and he would say it's their job to recruit players that are better than you, and it's your job to beat them out. And if we do that, we'll be really good. So I think anytime you're trying to find ways to better your program, obviously you're continuing to find ways to add talent, add the right fits, and then have a lot of conversations as you go. But it is a very, very complicated way of doing things, and you have to have a plan. Otherwise you can fail miserably.
So the plan is really is it more of a kind of a long-term roster construction plan? I guess what I'm getting at is I've been texting constantly with a couple of friends, this off season as news is coming in and things are going on about what is the best way to build a roster right now. And you talk about getting older to be competitive, but at the same time, I can't help but think, and I've said it on the show several times, we still have this big glut of extra players in college right now because of the COVID bonus year.
Sure.
But I have to think that means a lot of high school players are being way undervalued, and
Right.
that there is some long-term value in bringing those guys in, even if they're not playing immediately. And I know everybody wants to play right away, but even if they're not playing immediately, if you can kind of retain guys for a few years and build them up, the way Rick did, when you were there, and I know it's a different era already. But do you see there's the current landscape, but do you still kind of see it an ideal way to build a roster? Is it kind of a mix of all the above?
It's a really hard question. I will say this. It depends on the level where you're at. Like, I have some good friends that head coaches at lower levels, and they've just lost their mind because they'll bring in a kid who has a great freshman year and he's gone.
Yeah.
So retention becomes a major issue. Obviously, I don't think we will deal with that at St. Louis like you would at places like that. But I have no doubt that finding that balance can be dependent upon your style of play. Like, it was really important to me when I got here to understand what works in Coach Ford's system. Like, what's the most valuable parts of, so watching workouts and studying players and watching film and understanding what he likes and what he doesn't like and what he thinks may be some issues. Because as you learn that, you start to think like, okay, long-term, if you bring a guy in and you put him in a position where he's playing behind a particular person, but he's evolving, and we can put him in a place where he can develop, there's no question there's value in that. And high school is under recruited right now. Junior college is extremely under recruited, right? Mm-hmm. So everybody's just living on the portal. So trying to find that balance to do it. I'm not sure there's a right answer. I think it depends upon the program. It depends upon the staff, and it depends upon your current personnel. And like you said, COVID is a whole different factor when it comes to that, because now you're trying to add in, does a kid have another year? If he wants to use it, is he going to use it? So it can be very, very challenging, but I'm not sure there's a right or wrong answer. As much as you're trying to have some sense of sustainability, but also know that there's needs to be addressed. And if you can do that to make your team better and win, then you have to do it.
You mentioned how big of a thing retention is. And I mean, I think you kind of probably pre-answered it by, it's talking about being upfront and honest. But how do you, approach that when a player does have a big year? Maybe he's in your plans the next year or the year after, but doesn't see it. How do you kind of try to keep all the pieces together?
If you have those conversations, Zach, at the end of the season, you're too late. Like, those conversations have to begin early. And it's not about whether they're having a good year or bad year, but it's basically sitting down with each kid and saying, hey, this is where we see you. This is what we're trying to develop. This is the things that you need to get better in. These might be things you have to address off the floor. This is the way you have to improve as a person. Like, you have to have an ideal way to show them, because it's no different to a professional. You have to show how you're going to increase their value and make them better, and show them that this is the plan and we're going to do with you from a personal development perspective, from understanding how to be statistically, how professionals may look at it. Very fortunate to be close with a lot of different agents and general managers and scouts and people, to where you can sit there and say, hey, look at the information, look at all the things that's going on. Here's some things we see. And I think if you're doing that consistently throughout the year, you can prevent problems from occurring. Doesn't mean it won't happen, but you got to get out ahead of things at all times and try to find ways to show guys that, hey, this is what we're looking to do. And I think kids respect that, as long as you're willing to be honest, good or bad. I think kids respect that.
How much time have you been able to spend with the existing players at SLU right now? Individual workouts, meetings, etc.?
Yeah, as much as I can. I think that's, to me, the most difficult thing in terms of, I've always felt like genuine, authentic relationships take time. And I've told different guys that, whether it be, having lunch with Gibson or spending different time with TJ or being around guys, like, you just sit and try and talk. And I think it takes time, to be in the trenches with these guys and go through the things you go through. You build lifetime relationships, and that's not just done over just sitting down over a cup of coffee or a Subway sandwich. You know what I mean? So I've tried to, as much as I can. A lot of the guys are obviously leaving now for break, but having those conversations on the phone, staying connected, FaceTime guys, talking to guys, I think it's critical, and obviously a big part of what I do. It's have those relationships. So as much as humanly possible, along with recruiting, probably to answer your question most.
Right.
Is there anyone that has stood out either on the court or off the court that you've kind of gotten to know as, even, player, coach, anybody?
Well, coach wise, I love this stuff, like you can see the different components to it and how they are. It's a really close staff. They get along great. I've been part of staff, so you see it and you hear it, and there's different problems and egos. I see none of that here. But what I have seen on the floor, I've been really encouraged. I told Coach my first workout, I was sitting there watching Sincere and Larry, and I was like, wow, I'm pretty impressed, from just watching those guys play. Obviously, I felt like when you're looking at a particular athlete, whether it be like the Pac-12 or the Big Ten, there's always this feeling that it's going to be bigger, better sized athletes. I think our perimeter players have good size and shoot the ball really well. So the guys that I have looked at, Larry was really impressive to me. I think he's going to make a big jump. I think Sincere is going to make a big jump. And what I've seen from those guys, I was really impressed. Obviously, Gibson, guys like that, you see what you see, and you love their ability. But yeah, I think that the perimeter players that we have here in place, I really like. I really, really like.
Stylistically, have you guys talked a lot yet about how things are going to change now that Yuri Collins is gone? Because for the last 4 years, everything has gone through him, and that's been so much of this team's identity. And now that he's gone, clearly we're going to have to play a lot differently than we did before.
Yeah, I think there's some excitement about that. Obviously, you miss somebody that's that talented. He had a massive impact on this program, and he had a wonderful career. I think that's what coaches love most, is the challenge of like, okay, what now? And in all honesty, we've had some of those conversations, probably not as much as what we'll have at a later date. Everything has probably been recruiting at the forefront of everything we talk about of all day, every day. And knowing what we're looking for and how we're going to do it. But we've had different conversations about, hey, what have you seen with this? And I think sometimes when you can come in with a fresh perspective and a new set of eyes, sometimes you can see something that maybe might be, hey, here's what I see with this, or I like this, or how about this, or have you ever thought about this? And those are the conversations that Coach encourages, and we've had over a lot of dinners at his house so far. So I'm excited about that. I'm looking forward to that challenge. I wish he was still here. It'd be fun to have him, fun to coach him. But obviously he's not. So we got to figure out what's the next steps moving forward.
I'm curious what you took from working under Rick Majerus. Like, what do you think, what aspect of your coaching style or your style as a professional in general do you think you took most from Rick?
And this, Zach, like, one of the things that I say to people all the time is it was the hardest 4 years of my life, the most rewarding 4 years. And probably, I always say it's the equivalent of doing like your basketball PhD, right? Like, I knew going into it, like, this is going to be unbelievably hard. But I had no idea. But once I got in it and I thought, like, I'm not sure I can do this. This is going to be, it's either going to make it or break it. And as every day went by, you felt like you were being part of a clinic and you were challenged to the nth degree in every single way. when you were driving, at the time I lived in Baldwin, and when you were driving down the highway to come to work, like I would have stomach pains, right? Because I would know like what I'm walking into. And I would know that the level of detail and the questions that I was going to ask, like if you got it wrong, you might get crucified for the next 2 years because of it. So like you had to be so prepared and so organized. And I think that development of that 4-year window for me, when I've moved on in life and going to different staffs and different programs, I every day have said like, thank you for everything you did for me, because it's helped prepare me to be the coach that I really want to be, and it put me in situations. It was the hardest things I've ever had to deal with for certain long periods of time, but it made me accountable. It made me incredibly prepared. And then there was just no slippage in anything we did. There was no slippage in anything in the program. And he had his thumb on it at all point in time. And you knew like, I better be ready. This could be the next 10 questions he asked. He might be talking scouting and he might say, how many times did they run this play? And you better be able to say, they ran it 14 times to the right and 11 times to the left. And you better be right. And then when he says, when they ran it right, how many times they score? And you say, well, they ran it. They scored 7 times, right? They missed 4, but 7 of their buckets, they got 3s. And they'd be like, what kind of 3s? And you better know corner 3s. Well, were they dead corner or regular corner? So like he would just keep going, right? And finally you might get to a point and be like, I don't know. And he's like, you know what? I'm wasting my time with you. You know what I mean? It was like, I just answered like 19 questions in a row. You know what I mean? I just got it all right. And I spent like 10 hours studying for this, but it was like recruiting. It was scouting. It was the whole deal. And you just felt like on edge. We used to call him the hurricane because he'd just come busting. I'm in the same office, guys, that I was in 15 years ago, right? So like I walked in and I kind of got a little bit scared. Like I got a little bit spooked. I'm like looking out the window and, whatever, those feelings and emotions of him like busting through that door. And I even told Coach Ford, we were sitting in the room in his office. And I was like, this office is like, I've had the best moments of my career and the hardest times of my career, like in this office. You know what I mean? Like I've had some discussions and some things like in this office that I'll never forget. So like all those feelings and emotions, and I know I'm giving you the longest winded answer ever, but all those feelings and emotions of all those things that you go through, it'll never leave me. Like it'll never leave me. And it like, hopefully it made me a lot better.
You're apologizing for doing something we want you to do.
Trust me, you get me started and I'll go for days on it.
Let's start with imagining Rick Majerus in the age of name, image, and likeness.
It would be unreal. It would be, like I tell this story, right? So we're sitting, I won't name the kid. We're sitting at his hotel, right? We're having a breakfast. And we had spent so much time recruiting this kid, right? He was a junior college All-American. He was a terrific player and a really good kid. He didn't come here, Zach, so don't even think about it.
No, Peter knows. He's got to know.
So we have this kid sitting at the hotel, Rick's hotel, breakfast, right? Here we go. And we're thinking like, we've got it. Like we've got this kid. He's long, he's talented, he's athletic. Like he's coming, right? So coach comes down for breakfast and he was just in one of those moods. So he says to the kid, talk to me about your goals and your situation. The kid's like, well, I'm thinking about, trying to be in the NBA in a year. And Rick kind of like leans back at his chair. And I was like, oh no. And he's like, son, are you kidding me? And so he gets on the phone, gets someone to go to his room, comes down, and he has a San Antonio Spurs jersey. He makes the kid stand up and put the jersey on. The jersey's like below his knees, right? And he's like, son, that's an NBA player's jersey. Like that's what an NBA player looks like. That's how that's how big they are. Like, are you kidding me? And just goes all in on this kid, right? And he just buries him like, you're too skinny, you're too weak, you're too soft, like your mentality, like I can't stand how you talk, like all in the whole way. So anyways, he's like, all right, that's it at breakfast. And we look at the kid, to Alex Jensen. I'm like, well, we better recruit somebody else out. I mean, it was just things like that. You just couldn't. So when a kid comes to him and asks for like, a certain dollar amount, he would like lean back and be like, what? Like it would be.
I just bought you an $80 steak at
Right.
Like, what do you want more?
Right. Like, how about you get some rebounds first? Like, how about you rebound the ball? And, like it would become, but I will say this, he's the smartest man I've ever met. And he would adapt and he would figure it out. And he would have found a way to be extremely successful because that's just who he was. Like he's just so brilliant. He was so brilliant he would figure it out.
I do find it interesting that, a guy that's so dedicated to basketball, only basketball, like the way he kind of meshed with a guy like, or he would bring in a guy like Cody Ellis, Rob Lowe, a little bit more, again, laid back, Oceana, Cody Ellis definitely tipped a few the night before games. I'm sure of it.
No doubt.
How does Rick handle that? Or does he just kind of ostrich that situation? Head right in the sand.
If you can play, right? Like if you can play and you love ball and you're committed to the team, it was okay, right? Like the different personalities and who they were. Like we go to, and Cody will tell you this story. So we go to Perth, right? And it's me and Coach. And we go, firstly, you got to get all the way to Sydney, right? Which is 13, 15 hours, whatever it is. Then you got to go another 6 out to Perth, right? So it's the most isolated city in the world, right? So we're all the way out in Perth and he's tired. Like we just flew all this way and we're sitting down with Cody's mom, dad at dinner. And his mom, God bless her, brings out this nice dip. And she puts this dip on the table, right? Well, Coach thinks it's soup. And he's like just eating the soup, right? And I'm thinking like, and I had told him prior to the dinner, I was like, Coach, listen, Cody's old man is kind of a man's man, right? Like, and if he offers you a beer, like, you got to have a sip, like you got to say yes, like don't say no. And he's like, I don't drink. And I'm like, I know that, but like just to have a sip and leave it there. So Mike Ellis comes around the corner and he's like, you want a beer, Rick? And it's like, he's like, have you got one of them umbrella drinks? So he has like this, cocktail and he's just rolling into the soup, which was dip at the time. And it was just like moments like that, like people just loved, like the innocence of the whole thing was it was just comical. But then when Cody comes over and he's just like so brutally honest with him and telling him how soft he was and he couldn't guard anybody and that like how weak he was and all these different things. And then Cody bangs like back-to-back threes, like, so this relationship of knowing how to get like the best out of like his staff, his players, he had this charismatic way about him. Like you just couldn't help but love, and then he would say things that would just be so piercing and just so scathing, that would just, be so hard. But God bless those kids. I mean, they put up with so much. And when you win, you see, what you get from it. And that's what made it such a special time was, we won and we won big, we won big. So
you're in the exact same office as before. Was there any part of you that was like, maybe I'll get a fresh start in another one?
No. So true story. So I told Coach, there's 2 offices available, right? And I was like, I want that one. And he was like, okay. And I was like, that was my office. Like, I want that one. Obviously we're moving to this beautiful facility that's going to be done here in August or September or whatever. But I just felt like, man, let me get in this office just to kind of have these memories. And which it has been because, you're on the phone on recruits all day long and I'm looking out this exact same view. And it just, for me, it was just like kind of cool. You know what I mean? Like it was kind of cool because this has always been a place for me that I have my best memories. I said this to many, many people. Like I had my best memories here at SLU. And some of the kids that I coached, I have the closest relationships to. So just the whole thing encompassed, like it just makes sense. So I felt like the office just made sense too.
It's been 15 years, but it certainly doesn't feel that way, except when you go back and look at highlights or game film from, 2010, 11, 12 team. The fashion is just off the charts different. I mean, the length of those shorts were ridiculous.
Suits and yeah. Ridiculous.
Oh,
I had
my
like
God.
Goatee. My wife's like, you look terrible. Like, what were you doing? You know what I mean? And I was like, babe, I thought I looked fantastic. Like, All those, yeah, they're hard. I told Brian Kunderman, I was like, what kind of picture are you posting of me, bro? Like, can you not find a better picture? Like, you know what I mean? It's just, it is the suits, the get up, the whole, it was classic. Yeah, absolutely classic.
Oh man.
You say I know you've got all these memories of Majerus in that era. And I listened to your interview with May today, and he talked about how Avery is now 16, perfectly healthy, doing well. I know you had some hard memories from St. Louis as well. Was there any part of you that kind of hesitated a little bit to go, those were tough days too?
That's a great question. From going through all those things, it never crossed my mind, and I don't know why. You would think it would. And I would say from that point till now, I've been through a ton, probably more personally than I've been through professionally. Got divorced, got remarried, have 4 wonderful children. But that memory of that day, obviously will always be with me no matter where I am. But the people that were here, Janet Oberly, Rachel Diener, all those people that helped me initially through those things, I'll never forget. That's what probably made that bond even stronger. But the personal different things you go through, I never thought about that. It never crossed my mind. And actually, the first person I told that I was taking the job other than my wife was Avery. And the reason why, I just felt like he would be excited. And of course he was fired up. He was, I'm now a 6-hour drive down the road instead of being, in California and those places. So he was fired up. So, yeah, it was really cool, but no, that never crossed my mind.
I'm curious because in the time, again, that it's been, the campus, it's same for the most part, but I mean, there's so much different. I mean, I think when you were here, Del Taco was still open.
Yeah.
But I mean, I'm assuming you've already walked through campus. Any big changes that kind of shocked you? Was West Pine still a basketball gym when you were here?
Yes.
Did you go in?
Yes.
It's insane.
Absolutely. So I went on
it's bizarre.
My first campus tour. Coach Tate was doing it, and I jumped on. It was a kid that I brought in here, and I jumped on the tour. And it was like, I was like making him stop everywhere. And I was like telling him what this was and what that was and like what this was. I'm obviously, as you probably know, Zach, like I'm a big coffee guy. Like I've got major coffee issues. But we're walking through campus, and I was like, whoa, there's a Starbucks right here. You know what I mean? Like those kind of things tour as we go. But even driving around the city and going to these different places, like we literally did Pappy's like every visit, right? Like we would order Pappy's like every visit, or we would go to the Hill. Like I haven't been to either one of them yet. We've had God knows how many recruiting meals so far, but just driving around and seeing the city and seeing the facilities and seeing all those things. Yeah, it's wild to see how much this place has grown and what it looks like now, which for me, my twisted mind immediately goes to recruiting, right? So as soon as we walk through something, I'm thinking, how does this help recruiting? I'm FaceTiming kids. I'm showing them different things. And it's even more impressive. So what they've done here has been remarkable. And man, it's going to be fun. It's going to be a lot of fun.
What's it been like to have Tate showing you around?
He's the best.
Going out to dinner with him and stuff.
I didn't know him at all. Like didn't know him one bit. And it's funny. Everybody, Zach, this, like everybody calls me Harry. Like nobody calls me Chris. I don't know one person in my life that calls me Chris. Right. So I get here, and for the first couple of days that, people are saying, hi, Chris, whatever else. And I'm kind of like looking around like, and then you see Janet, she's like, what's up, Harry? Like whatever else. Well, Corey's obviously, he calls me Big C. So he's got these different lines and all these different stuff. But like, I have loved being around that guy. And you see the effect that he has on the kids. You see his personality around recruits. He's been the best. He was stuck in a little snowstorm driving today. We were laughing on the phone on FaceTime. I love that dude. And I've quickly found out he's Mr. St. Louis. Now, we crossed paths once or twice, maybe like 15 years ago. He was at Mineral Air at the time, but we never got a chance to spend time like this. So, yeah, we've had a good time. He's a lot of fun to be around. The whole staff they're great.
You're going to bury the lead that Corey Tate's out recruiting in a place that's snowing?
I didn't say that. I didn't say that. It's funny. Like someone said to me the other day, oh, so you guys, how's the recruiting going, whatever. And you obviously you got to be somewhat mindful of talking about those things. But I can guarantee you this. Since I've been here, just my perspective only, and walked in the door, recruiting has been nonstop, and there's been players coming in nonstop, a revolving door of different prospects, and I love every one of them. And I'm fully comfortable that we're going to have some really, really good players here. And it's most important, as you guys know, to get the right ones. So just like any place, New Mexico was wild when it came to recruiting. You would get off kid would get off the plane and there'd be cameras everywhere and you couldn't hide anything. It's not like that here, thankfully. But I'm very, very excited about the kids we're recruiting, and I think we're going to have some really good players here shortly.
One last thing before we let you go, and thanks again for your time and coming on the show.
Listen, I'm living in a hotel, man. I got nowhere to be. I can be on with you guys for the next 5 hours.
Hey, I mean, you want to
Don't
do
tell
the rest?
Zach that.
I got nowhere to go.
Hey,
I got nowhere to go.
Harry, co-host for the rest of the show. I mean,
I'd love to jump on and co-host once or twice.
Let's do it, right? Let's do it right now.
Let's do
it.
But
no, I got the game on TV. I'm going to sit here and call kids all night long. I'm going to jump on a recruiting call. Yeah, I got nowhere to be, man. Take your time.
I don't know if you know this, but Zach is taking credit for you coming back to SLU. He thinks he may have willed this into existence. You're aware of that?
I accidentally did this.
He told me. I appreciate you doing that, Zach. I didn't know what I was going to do. I was looking at these other schools, and thank God he's in my life. And he was, the crazy thing is as you start to come back here, like I had called, a couple of different people prior to coming back and just said, hey, talk to me, because you build these strong relationships. And it's funny that as you come back and you see some of these people, like Zach, I remember seeing this dude nonstop. We would play on the road and we'd be in some remote place. And then you turn around, boom, there he is, jersey on, beer in his hand, rocking and ready to rock. You know what I mean? He was everywhere. So I know how much the Billikens mean to him, and the fact that he brought me back here, I'm very appreciative of it. So, thank you so much.
Yeah, it's so funny that you say that, because I recall being everywhere, and I recall Rick showed up and he was hired, and he was hired really early, and he went on a dorm tour,
right,
where he spoke at every dorm. And I went to everyone. I swear to God.
Did you really?
Yes. And I remember I think it was the fourth time he goes, dude, what's going on here? Why are you here? It's the same thing every time. You're stalking me, dude. Chill out.
No, you're the best, man. You were, it's funny, even talking to Rama, that, it's amazing. It's amazing to touch base with all these people, because like I said, that those memories and those events and times, and Chris was talking about losing to Michigan State. I still talk about that game, or having discussions about when we went to that tournament in LA and we beat Oklahoma. We beat Boston College first, then Oklahoma, then Villanova, roll through that tournament, or beating Washington at home. There's all these different things, and that's all I know, right? So someone's oh, we're gonna get back to being. I'm no, that's what it is. That's what it is. That's what this place is. It's not what it's we're gonna get. It is. If it hasn't been that way, it's about to be again. You know what I mean? Because there's just too much good here for it not to be successful. And I believe in Coach. I really do. After being around him, I'm really, really impressed in his philosophy, how he treats people, his ability to connect, his ability to recruit. Sometimes you can get scared, fellas. You can recruit a kid, and then when you bring him to campus, you're a little bit nervous of what's going to happen with the head coach, how it's all going to go. I can't wait to get a kid in front of Coach Ford. I can't wait to have a recruit around him, because it's only going to enhance your chances to get him. So his personality, the coffee markets in St. Louis are going to be done because we both drink so much coffee.
You mean he doesn't put an NBA jersey on a kid in Beretta?
He has not done that yet.
Okay.
He's not done that yet. Or he's,
checking.
I mean, I'll tell you that, like, I promise this is the last story. So we're in Florida.
You're
right?
promising something we don't want to hear.
We're in Florida, me and Rick, and we're recruiting a kid, Martavius Irving, I think it might have been, went to Kansas State. So they lived in a really tough area in Fort Lauderdale. And we go down on the recruiting visit, and I don't know, I probably shouldn't tell this one, but I will anyway. So we're doing a home visit, and we're in there or whatever, and we're having this, great, conversation or whatever. And coach says, I got to get up. I got to go to the bathroom real quick. So I'm carrying the conversation. We're talking, and it's going a minute, 2 minutes. It's going a little bit for a while. And I'm thinking to myself, like, where did he go? Right. So the way the house was set up, like if you walk past the hallway, right, you can look down to the bathroom, like you could see the bathroom, right? And I'm thinking, like, so my antennas go up immediately, like, okay, whatever's going on is probably not good, right? So we got to avoid this, right? And as this is happening, his mom gets up and says, hey, let's go from the kitchen over to the living room. Well, you got to walk past the hallway to get to the living room, right? So I jump up first. And I turn and look down, and he's standing at the bathroom, and he's got his pants around his ankles. And I'm like thinking to myself, like, so I'm trying to tell the mom and the kid, like, stop, like, hey, what's this? Like trying to talk about the room, like, what we got going on over here? Like doing all that. It was just like moments like that. There was just the greatest, funniest stories when you get back and you're talking to the other assistants about and those things. But then he comes back and he's the most charismatic, like amazing person to them, and just new history of all these different things. And he was
compartmentalization, like you read about.
You can't, when I first got the job, I'm walking past a guy named Donnie Daniels who worked for him at Utah for a long time. I don't know Donnie Daniels, and I'm walking past, and Donnie like taps me on the shoulder. I turn around, he's at Gonzaga at the time. And he puts his arm around me. He's like, it's going to be okay. And I was like, what does that mean? And he's like, it's going to be okay. Like the people that work for him know to other people, like, hey, I get it. You know what I mean? Like, I get it. I understand it. So, yeah, no, it was amazing. Time. Amazing time. But thankfully I won't have any of those issues with Coach Ford.
No, I would hope not. Yeah.
Well, gosh.
Welcome back,
Yes.
and Zach, I think we got to let this man make some calls.
Yeah,
it's in our best interest to let you get back on the
yes.
phone with
Yes.
people
No, I
who aren't
appreciate
us.
it, fellas. I appreciate it. It's been great. I'll come on anytime. It's great to see you guys, and like I said, man, just so excited to hopefully be in the gym with you guys and be around you guys as much as possible. I know you do a terrific job, and don't tell Chris May I said this, but best podcast in St. Louis. So
Let's go.
Yeah.
Well,
Yeah,
Harry,
thank you very much.
We'll catch up off the show a little more, but it was unbelievable catching up with you, and we're Billiken fans. We're behind you, man.
Appreciate it, fellas. Look forward to it, and we'll talk soon.
Pete, I really hope that my intro, as Chris Harriman said, under promise, over deliver. I really hope that I did under promise and over deliver with that interview, because quite honestly is one of the most fun interviews I think I've done.
It's clear that you kind of had an existing rapport with him. I think that really helps, that you guys had a relationship of some kind, to where knowing each other really gave him that familiarity. But I think he's just that kind of guy. I mean, he's been in this profession a long time. He's a good recruiter, just a naturally charismatic guy. And as he said, he likes to think that he can kind of fit in any situation. And man, does that make for a good interview.
Kind of vintage, throwing it back to the Cody Ellis interview, the Kyle Cassidy interview, the guys that I went to school with, or were in college at the same time with, got to know a little bit then. It really has that same type of feel to it. But yeah, thank you again to Harry for jumping on the show and giving us more time than we could have even asked for. But Pete, I want to switch gears a little bit, because what I've always told people when they say, hey, you know what, we appreciate coverage, talking about us, right? I always say, if you win, you will get top billing on this show. And
Right.
right now, nobody is hotter in the athletic department than Billiken softball.
It's incredible.
So we're going to talk about them first, because they are representing the Billikens at a high level right now.
They absolutely are. They're and we'll get to it. They're on a program record winning streak, and it's been incredible to watch how they're doing it too. We want to kick it off, Zach. They had a game.
They played
Wednesday the
Lindenwood.
22nd.
Yes. Sorry, I'm trying to sell my bike, and I get messages on Facebook constantly, so I apologize. I got thrown off there for a minute. Pete, a 6-4 win versus Lindenwood on Wednesday the 22nd. It got a little bit tricky at the end there.
They made it interesting. It was their
Yes.
this was the 9th straight win, which I believe this was the one that tied the school record. And the last team to win 9 straight was back in 2015, not too long ago. 5 different players had at least 1 RBI in this one, with Natalie Sullivan driving in 2. Sullivan and Marietta were the only players with 2 hits. And Kelsey Etling hit her 4th home run of the season, which was a solo shot. Kylie Hanner allowed 1 earned run in 4 innings of work, and then Taylor Hockman pitched the last 3 innings, allowing 1 more earned run and 2 unearned. But she wound up getting the win, luckily. What's been amazing to me is, and this is no exception, they've been, without a whole lot of hits, been able to kind of pull out wins. Not a huge offensive game. They've just been really efficient in making everything count. So this was one of those kind of wins, and in a midweek game too. It's tough to pull off.
On to the next game, 3-2 win in 10 innings versus George Mason. A lot of extra innings on the diamond, both for baseball and softball this weekend. SLU took a 2-0 lead in the bottom of the first on Sullivan's 4th home run of the season. Mason then tied it in the 3rd. There was no more scoring until the 10th. Pitchers duel all the way through. Chloe Ryan led off with a single, and Sullivan moved her to second on a sac fly. Gabby Kowalik gave SLU 1st and 3rd with another single, and Abby Mallow, who else, drives in the winning run with a sac fly. Chloe Wendling went all 10 innings for her 19th win of the season, 2nd most in program history. And this is the team's 10th. This was the team's 10th straight win, establishing a new school record, Pete.
Yeah, and they kept it going. Later that day, it was game 2 of a doubleheader. Another walk-off too, 4-3 win against George Mason, the 11th straight win. This one in the 7th inning, though. They didn't need extras. The game went back and forth for a while before pinch hitter Kendall Johnson sent Grace Kmack home on a single. Ryan, Sullivan, and Mallow had 2 hits apiece. No surprises there. Ryan scored twice for the 2nd straight game. She's been a great leadoff hitter. She also had an RBI, and Mallow had 2. Kylie Hanner went the distance for the win in this one. Really quality game for her. And then, Zach, they capped off the series on Sunday the 30th. This one, not as close as the others.
Yeah, I got a bone to pick with this game. I was trying to work out during the entire game, and when it only goes 5 innings, it really, I have to find something new. So thanks for nothing. The Billikens blow out George Mason 9-1 in 5 innings on Sunday the 30th. Chloe Wendling, Kylie Hanner, Cammie Newbanks, Kelsey Etling, and Gabby Kowalik. By the way, speaking of mispronunciation, Kineski, I need to apologize. I've been saying it wrong for probably 2 years now.
It's Kineski?
Yes. Because as I'm on the bike listening to the dulcet tones of our good friend, he calls her Kineski.
All right. Then I guess that's what we'll do. But But those 5 you just mentioned were honored, Zach.
Yes. See, they got the senior day honoring. And I mean, some of them been here again, 5 years, and we'll talk about it in a minute. Stu Durando put out a really nice piece on, the duo of Chloe Wendling, Gabby Kowalik, and then the rest of the seniors as well. The win streak is now at 12 in a row, extending that program record that we mentioned before. Mason actually scored first in this one. A little nervy for a second. I was a little worried. They got their only run in the top of the first inning. SLU didn't score until the third when they had 3, then scored 4 in the fourth and 2 in the fifth. Mello was 2 for 3 with a home run and 3 RBIs. The home run was her 12th of the season, and she now owns the SLU record for RBIs in a season with 52. Abbott and Etling also went 2 for 3 with Abbott driving in 2. Etling scored twice. Kowalik and Sullivan also scored twice. Wendling got her 20th win, pitching all 5 innings.
Yeah, and to top it off, we just found out today that Mallow was selected A10 Rookie of the Week. So she just continues.
I thought it was her third play. I thought somebody had their third straight. Is that her third straight Rookie of the Week?
She was Player of the Week before, and now it's Rookie of the Week. So the cop out,
Somebody got a participation trophy.
But regardless, SLU is now in sole possession of first place with a conference record of 18-4, overall record of 27-22. Zach, I was thinking this. The impressive thing about this winning streak is that it's come against 4 different A10 opponents who are 3rd, 4th, 6th, and 7th in the standings. So it's not just like they're beating up on bottom feeders that happen to be clustered together in the schedule. And they're kind of winning in a variety of ways. You've got pitchers duels here, high scoring games, blowouts. They're just grinding out wins no matter what the game throws at them. And no matter what kind of day they're having. It's been really, really impressive to watch. I got to hand it to them. I did not see this kind of streak coming. I just didn't.
No, it's pretty crazy that, 2 of the they mentioned in the article that this has kind of mirrored the women's basketball team. And I don't know if you can compare the 2. It's a very, very different situation. You have a bunch of players that have been here forever.
And a long tenured coach.
And a long tenured coach. I believe she's now the longest tenured coach at SLU. Since Halliburton left and then Miller.
Mm-hmm.
But yeah, it's incredible what she's doing. And certainly they are benefiting from the COVID bonus year.
They certainly are. I mean, you definitely look at the senior class and it's like, okay, well, that's 5 big names, right? I mean, they're losing a lot. They're losing 2 of their key pitchers. They're losing a couple big bats. It's going to be a tough class to replace, but regardless, you can't say enough good things about how they're playing right now. Next up, they're going to finish the regular season against 5th place Rhode Island up in Kingston. The Rams are 11-11 in conference and 6 games below 500 overall with a record of 21, 27-1. The tie was against last place St. Bonaventure. I meant to look into what happened that led that one to be a tie. And
was it at St. Bonaventure? Because
that was my hunch.
Because it was I'm gonna go with a light situation.
Yeah, it was lights or blizzard. I don't know, something. Who
I know
knows?
the baseball diamond doesn't have lights, and if the baseball diamond doesn't have lights, a good chance that the softball field does not either.
That's right. Yeah.
One thing I thought was kind of, I don't know if I like the mentality. There's nothing wrong with the mentality. Our goal is to be in the A10 championship game, then all bets are off because everyone has seen everyone. I really feel like, I don't know, it's way more impressive for them to win this regular season championship for the first time in program history. Obviously an NCAA tournament bid would be wonderful. But I think it's a better mark of a team. I don't know.
To win the regular season.
Yeah.
Yeah. Yeah. No. And this was one we had talked about before. We're like, is this program getting stagnant? Do they need to make a move here?
And that's entirely possible. I mean, it's just, I think with this, you're talking about a team that doesn't have a lot of resources. Again, no press box. They don't have the hitting center that the baseball team has. I mean, dude, like you'll maybe win once every 8 years. I mean, I think Dayton's tough, but I mean, this could be the year, and it would be wild that I think what Carter mentioned to us that 5 teams at St. Louis University could make the NCAA or could be A10 champions in 1 year.
Is that assuming both baseball and softball?
Yes.
Okay. Yeah. I mean,
Yeah,
it's certainly possible. I mean, they're both very much in the mix. And no matter what conference you're in, 18-4 is a crazy conference record. I mean, that's because that means you're sweeping teams, right?
Yes.
Like you're not just winning series with an 18-4 record. You're sweeping teams just as much as you're winning a 2-1 series there.
Softball's super interesting because of the pitching situation and how much it differs from baseball.
Right.
And that it all like pulling a pitcher is almost always strategic. I guess in baseball, it's obviously there's strategy with the pitcher and his health, but like I'm talking like game specific strategy. It's not necessarily like strategic look. You're never looking ahead to the next game. Sorry, got the hockey on. Goalie just got murdered.
Good audio content right there.
Yeah, I try to please everyone. But anyway, yeah, no, it's amazing. It's great to see, and of course, we love anytime the Billikens are doing really well.
Yeah, we sure do, and that's we had an interview, but otherwise, that's why we're leading off the rest of the week with what they've done, because I know I've used the word a lot, but they've just been so impressive and fun to watch this season.
Let's jump right back to basketball. Will Bailey officially takes the job under Drew Valentine at Loyola. He will be leaving St. Louis University.
Yeah, he's a Chicago native. He played at UAB back in the 90s, I guess, and started his coaching career there, followed by stops at East Tennessee State, Maine, Chicago State, LaSalle, SLU, South Carolina, UMass, those under Frank Martin, although he never technically coached at UMass, SLU again, and now Loyola. So look, it's a profession where you hop around a lot. This is a lot of stops in a really short amount of time, to get from South Carolina to Loyola. But it was kind of weird, Zach, because with assistant coaches, you kind of get more attached to them. It takes a little time, right? Because then you start to see like their recruiting efforts pay off. That always takes a couple seasons before you really start seeing those. And we just, with this round of Bailey, the second round of Bailey coming through the program, I feel like I didn't get too attached this time around. And he was gone just as quick as he came. I don't know if you feel the same way on that, but it's kind of a weird feeling.
Yeah, it really is. It is. I think the portal has kind of done it's kind of softened that a little bit. What am I looking for? That getting attached, right? I think the portal
Sure.
and understanding that people are just constantly moving. You're just kind of like, well, okay. It's really conditioned us.
Yeah, I think there's something to that for sure. I mean, it's interesting in this situation because now we've had back-to-back assistants leave. Obviously, we've already replaced one of them, but they've both gone to their hometowns basically, and it's you could say, well, they had opportunities there, and it's hard to pass those up. It's also, we've talked about this a couple of weeks ago, what it means for our program and the shape it's in and everything. And look, I feel great about the Harriman hire. I'm happy for Forte and Bailey going to their hometowns, recruiting their hometowns, and that's there's something to be said for that. So I really I like all these people. I wish the best for all of them. In the meantime, Christian Nunez is I'm guessing who's been filling in for now. The NCAA allows you to move up another staff member to a recruiting assistant position until you fill that position. And we've just seen a few offers, as we'll get into soon, that are coming from New York and DC. Nunez is a New Yorker. He knows the East Coast. It's not an area that Ford or Tate or Harriman are known for necessarily. So the indications that I'm seeing is that might be Nunez's influence going, I know A10 country, and I here are some more New York kids, guys from programs we're familiar with. So anyway, that's kind of, we haven't seen anything official that he's the guy who's kind of doing that work, but it sure feels like it to me right now. That he's out there and hitting those AAU events and working the areas that he knows best. Would be my guess as to what's going on right now.
Speaking of recruiting, some transfer news. We have confirmed a couple visitors. I mean, we haven't, but we in the general sense. Talk about Tim Dalger and Kawani.
Yeah, so Dalger is a 6'7", 218-pound forward from Tulsa. He'd be a senior, but he might still have 2 years of eligibility left because of the COVID year, I think. He played his freshman year at a JUCO, averaged about 10-5 at Tulsa. He's really not the most efficient scorer, about 38% from the field, although he does shoot about 35% from three on about 4 attempts a game, which is pretty nice to have at that position. Tulsa only went 5-25 this season under first-year coach Eric Conkle, and it's the second straight year they've had a ton of roster turnover, with 5 of their top 6 scorers leaving. So it's been, he's been there during a tumultuous time, and I'm interested to see in his last stop if some of those kind of efficiency issues can kind of clear up. But this is definitely a position of need for SLU. I mean, I think he'd be a true 4, even though he can stretch. I think he'd play a 4 in the A10, and that's definitely something we would need on the roster. I think this guy would too. Kwani, who's 6'9", 200, so a little taller, a little skinnier. He's a grad transfer from Cal. He will be graduating this month there. He averaged 9 and 4. He's also not the most efficient player from the field, but he can also step out and shoot it from 3. He's actually really good from the free throw line, which you don't often see for a guy who's not necessarily efficient from other areas. Really long, really lean. Like I said, more of a stretch 4 than a 5. His parents are South Sudanese, but fled a civil war, and he was born in Kenya. And then the family moved to Australia when he was 6. He started playing basketball when he was 11, and then 4 years later moved to the U.S. on his own to pursue it further. So he played 3 years at Victory Rock Prep in Florida. We know that name because that's where Mark High Strickland went. And then he finished at Prolific Prep in Napa, California. His older brother played at Eastern New Mexico, and he has 2 younger brothers who are both D1 prospects. Kier is a 2024 recruit who's at International Sports Academy in Ohio. And then Modding is a 2026 player who's in Australia, and he's in their national team program. I don't know if he will come over here at any point for prep school, but regardless, he looks really impressive on video. Kier is just starting to get D1 offers as a 2024 recruit. So that's something to keep an eye on, is the fact that he's got those younger brothers too. Harriman has hinted at this in his interview with us and his interview with May, with Stu. I think we've had 5 or 6 guys on campus. Those are the only 2 that we know for sure. We know more are on the way, and that more have been on campus. We just haven't been able to confirm names yet. So that's what we know for now.
One interesting and familiar name to hit the portal, Jimmy Bell Jr., the locomotive.
Yeah,
he's leaving West Virginia, and SLU has at least reached out.
It was surprising me to see him hit the portal, because he just played in their spring football game, and I thought, well, this is kind of a fun new chapter for him. Even if he's not going to be like a contributor or a factor on their football team, he's got that option there. But just a few days later, he hits the portal and says he's not pursuing football. So we know SLU has reached out. We could be an option, if he's not worried about football. He did say he wants to visit Mizzou and Mississippi State, so we don't want to get too far ahead of ourselves. But how do we feel about him possibly returning? I guess whatever circumstances he left under the first time around before he went to Moberly for a year, I guess he left on positive terms overall.
Yeah, I don't think it was, basketball related or, it definitely wasn't a basketball centric decision. So I'd welcome him back with open arms. Absolutely. I mean,
Yeah.
he is a beef we need in that middle, like that strength, that, um, physicality. I absolutely give me Jimmy Bell.
Yeah, I think so. I mean, again, we're talking about a position of need. The only five we have on the roster right now is Bruce,
Yep.
and he's an incoming freshman, and, there's just going to be a
Wait for
learning
him to
curve.
be the A10 player of the year.
You never know. You never know. He's certainly a skilled kid. He's certainly got the
I
size, but yeah, we definitely need more depth down
I
low.
I still think Bruce is either going to be like the greatest Billiken of all time or like, eh. Like he's going to be their Emmanuel Salantakis or he's going to be like Rob Lowe.
Rob Lowe, you're
Like
right.
I don't think there's going to be any in between. Like I don't know. I
I
just
like
think it's
that.
kind of that. It's such a mysterious signing that it's like it has to be good, right?
Yeah, yeah, we'll find out. First player from China. We'll see when he shows up on campus. The exciting thing is this month. We have graduation, we have the end of the school year and finals, and by the end of the month, we can start seeing incoming players show up if they want to. Some guys are going to go back home and do some different things over the summer. That's fine, but anytime between now and August, basically, we're going to start seeing people show up, and I love that. So yeah, you never know.
We're talking about the portal here, and you noted something
Mm,
strange today on Twitter. And I really think this is like something that would do like a 8 minute E60
right.
segment on, and that's potentially fake contact lists.
So this is something that I've kind of look, everybody talks about how annoyed they are when they see it in portal season, right?
Yeah.
Here's a player who's in the portal and says he's heard from or is being recruited by or has interest, however it's worded, from the following programs. And then there's a list of anywhere from 2 to 25 programs. And
An entire conference.
it's entirely possible that when those are being reported, that they're true, right? Like a guy hits the portal, he's a good player. A lot of different schools have a need for a player like that, and they call him up. Very like completely reasonable. And there are other times where you're just like, I just don't know about this. SLU got listed as interested in a player from Texas Tech, which seems reasonable on its face, right?
Yeah.
Texas Tech transfer Ethan Duncan will announce his commitment on May 1st, has received interest from, and then it goes on to list 10 schools: Northern Colorado, Texas Tech, Lipscomb, Middle Tennessee, St. Louis, San Diego, Robert Morris, Boston College, Colgate, Drake. So you have a pretty wide range of schools there.
None of those are in the same it's like if you like it literally is if you try to find colleges that were equidistant from each
Right.
other and span the entire United States.
You're right. They're literally all over the map in terms of program stature, geographic location. It's a very strange assortment, but again, entirely possible. These things happen. My policy, our policy on these things have been when SLU shows up on a list like this, we're not going to do a deep dive on a guy, right? Because it could have just been one phone call that went nowhere. Some guys
Jordan
want
Neisler called him.
some guys want the NIL bag. Some guys, it's just not a good fit. Whatever, as Harriman just told us, as Ford has said, they want to get some things clear with guys right up front to know whether they should keep pursuing or not, and that's part of the challenge right now.
I'm gonna try
This
that in my dating life.
you should, it's speed dating. I think you've already made that comparison as to what the portal is. It's kind of like speed dating.
Yes.
But this one struck me as weird, right? So back to our policy has generally been, we see one of these, we retweet it. If somebody who follows us wants to run with it, fine. But this one was weird because I once I saw he was making his commitment today. I originally saw it 4 days ago, retweet it, whatever, didn't think much about it. Then I dig into this kid and realize he's a former walk-on at Texas Tech. I think he just got a scholarship this season because it was one of those things where they had an extra. Probably they did one of those social media videos where they give him, the reveal of the scholarship and everything like that. But I look at this kid and he's local. He's from West Texas. He's from Lubbock. He was a walk-on. Now he's a scholarship player. He never played, like literally did not get in any games for Texas Tech. I read that he had a shoulder injury. Okay, fine. But I'm like, why would a former walk-on from Lubbock at Texas Tech be receiving interest from all these schools? And then I dig a little deeper and I'm like, I couldn't find any evidence of him being recruited by anybody out of high school. It's not like he just decided to stay home and walk on over offers. I don't think he had other D1 offers. Like there's just no record of D1 offers anywhere. And then when the kicker was he commits today to Lubbock Christian University.
That's not even the kicker, my man.
It's not the kicker. This is the beginning of Act 3, I guess. He commits to Lubbock Christian University, which is obviously a private small school in his own town of Lubbock, where Texas Tech is.
The Shyamalan level twist is coming, baby.
And I'll let you handle that. Now, granted, Lubbock Christian is NCAA Division II, right? It's not NAIA. It's not it's not a JUCO. It is D2. So sure, that's fine and everything. It's still small, it's like 1,500 undergrad kind of school or less. But the real kicker, Zach, is his dad is the coach of the school,
yep.
which you brought to my attention.
Yep.
And so I'm like, now I want to rewind, and I'm looking at the tweets about this kid, and you're telling me a guy who walked on at Texas Tech, who didn't play, had interest from multiple power conference schools and other schools all over the country. I'm like, I don't think that's true. I don't think SLU made that call. I don't think Boston College made that call. I don't think Texas Tech was trying to keep him. I think the whole point is you got a free scholarship this year, my man. Now it's time to move on and do your thing, unless you want to walk on here some more. I don't even know if he got a walk-on offer because they've got a new coach there. Who knows? The whole thing kind of just stunk to me. And so, yeah, I tweeted out like this is basically what I tweeted was Duncan committed to Lubbock Christian University and has us wondering what percentage of quote unquote interested schools for recruits are actually interested. And then I went on to say, this list appears to be completely fake. He's a former walk-on who didn't play at Texas Tech and was never a D1 prospect in high school. Now, look, maybe I'm wrong. Maybe these schools really did call. I really, really doubt it. And I'm willing to bet they didn't. And I'm willing to bet there were no actual offers from these D1 schools.
I could see like one or two calling just because oh, hey, this, kid from Texas Tech is transferring. Let's see what it's all about.
Mm-hmm.
And then you get, okay, cool. Never mind.
Yeah, and it wouldn't be Drake, it wouldn't be Boston College, it wouldn't be SLU, it wouldn't be Colgate. I mean, these are all those are teams either in power conferences or that have been winning, their non-power conferences lately. They're not scraping for walk-ons. I mean, that's not what they're doing. It just didn't make sense to me, and it just kind of stunk. And it's an interesting conversation, and I know there are
call it hustle. Call it hustle.
Call it hustle. Call it whatever you want. But I know there are a lot of sources out there that are just saying, here's who they've heard from. And there's not really a vetting process. And I think for the most part, you should take guys at their word. But I think it's weird that recruits are willing to put their names out there as having been contacted by or offered by or gotten interest from schools that clearly do not have interest in them. That's a bad look to me. And I hope that people learn that they shouldn't do that one way or the other. I don't wish the worst on anybody for making a dumb youthful mistake, but like, come on, man, like don't lie about who's recruiting you.
Oh, it really is the Wild West out there, Pete.
It really is.
Out
there in Lubbock.
Let's talk about the safe and familiar world of high school recruiting.
Like I hinted at earlier, we've got 3 new 2025 offers out, and I'll go through these quickly. The first one was to Jaden Fort, who's a 6'8" big man from Jackson Reed High School in Washington, D.C. He plays for Team Durant on the Nike EYBL AAU circuit. Long athletic forward. He's got a polished game for his age. Doesn't play like a sophomore. Great leaping ability, plenty of highlight reel finishes. He's got nice touch on his jumper, energetic rebounder, and excellent shot blocker. Really effective defensive player. The other offers he's got right now are from George Mason, Texas A&M, Old Dominion, and NJIT, New Jersey Institute of Technology, for those who don't know. Lots of interest, too. I think he's going to really raise his stock this summer heading into his junior year. The next one was Caden Mingo, who's a 6'2" point guard from Long Island Lutheran High School. Plays for the PSA Cardinals, which is another Nike EYBL program. That's the AAU program that gave us Hassan French, for those who might not be familiar. He's another one with a game beyond his years, but at the guard spot. He's kind of a downhill playmaker and a really nice finisher. He can hit his jumper consistently off the dribble, which is a skill you love to see for a younger guy. Lockdown defender. And he's got a brother in the class behind him who also looks like a D1 player already. I believe SLU was his first offer, so his recruitment's just starting to get off the ground. And then the third was Jaden Reed, who's a 6'8" forward from Westminster Academy in Connecticut. He also plays with the PSA Cardinals AAU program. He's an excellent shooter who stretches defense with his three-point ability. He's got soft touch around the rim. He's more of a back-to-the-basket big at this point when he's inside, but he runs the floor really well. Solid rebounder, and another excellent shot blocker. He's got a 7'2" wingspan already. Smart, hardworking kid. He's not afraid to play physical. And SLU is his third offer after Quinnipiac and Central Connecticut State.
Pete, the Billikens had a few individual workouts. Photos have come out. Anything that stuck out to you, or any news you've heard?
A few things, yeah. Kellen Thames looks huge. Tate, when he talked to Frank and Rammer, said he's up to 6'7" and has added about 15 to 20 pounds of muscle. So he looks way different than when he came in. And a guy with that size and the fact that he's played guard for so long, he's going to be able to do anything if he really keeps putting in the work, play any position, I mean. And then we also got to look at Daniel Rivera. He's been cleared to play after his foot surgery sidelined him this year. And his posts from the workouts that they've been having, tell me that he's sticking around. And we've only seen little glimpses, but it's good to actually see somebody we haven't seen at all, in a uniform doing anything out there practicing. So those were the things that really stuck out to me. I know we've got some other guys obviously returning, but what about you? Anything to read from these little clips we get?
Well, I actually thought it was wild that Corey Tate compared Larry to his father.
I did too. Yes. Way to set expectations there.
I mean, that, and to be fair, as one of our good friends pointed out, it wasn't really, the interview on the whole wasn't really a hype fest.
No,
it was a very down to earth interview, or down, on the level interview. And all of a sudden, Larry is, he's really looking a lot like his dad. What?
Yeah. Tate's he's sweet talking his players a little bit there. Larry's a much different player than his dad. He's a much different player. Obviously got a lot to work on in his game, but showed us some promise last season, and we're excited to see his development. Harry just told us, look, he expects him to make a big leap this season, and that's what we expect. But to compare him to the National Freshman of the Year in 1997 it's a lot. That's high expectations right there.
Pete, let's talk a little bit about the schedule, or I guess lack thereof in a lot of ways. So what's going on with this Myrtle Beach Invitational?
The word is that we're going to be in it. I don't think they've officially released the field yet, Zach, but I think we're going to be playing in this thing. This is the MTE, the multi-team event. Not my favorite acronym, as we know. But we discussed this a few weeks ago. The other schools, Coastal Carolina, who hosts in their home gym, Liberty, Vermont, Wichita State, Charleston, Furman, Wyoming. It's November 16th to 19th if they have it the same days as last year. It's the weekend before Thanksgiving, basically, is when it'll happen. And it's a 3-game event. So this likely means that SLU's going to have one less home game than they did the past couple seasons, because we do have some road obligations. We know that SIUC, Drake, and NC State are all locked in as road games. Stu told us that SLU hasn't signed any contracts yet, but has a few opponents lined up, including an NCAA team and an NIT team from last season coming in. Both Ford and Tate said it's easy to find good opponents who want to do a home and home, but they want you to go to their place first. It's much harder to find a home and home where they're willing to come to your place first. And I think that's the tough thing about scheduling right now, is kind of figuring out who blinks first. And unfortunately, all SLU can offer right now is dates at Chaffetz. So it's going to be tough to fill out the rest of the schedule, but that's kind of where they stand right now. And we'll see it take form. I don't think it'll be as challenging a schedule as we saw last season. But it sounds like there's some nice games on there nonetheless for us.
Pete, I think for the fan base's mental health, I feel like we're going to skip the portal section this week. We did that long interview with Harry, and we haven't seen any recruiting news, any firm commitments here for the Billikens. And I got to be honest, I get tired of seeing commitments to other schools and not SLU.
The good news is here, it was a little bit quieter week in the A10 regardless. So I think we can stack this one with the next week, because one thing that I've noticed is it's slowing down. Like, the portal is definitely slowing down. It's over 1,600 names in the D1 portal this season. The last 2 years have both been over 1,700, and we might see it still hit that. But it's clearly slowed down, and yeah, I don't mind skipping it either.
Yeah, and also I think we might have to skip the trivia question because we don't have one, and also we gave you that entire interview with Harry.
What do we want to do with the trivia discussion topic? Put it off for another week.
Yeah,
or take it this week?
Sorry, Chris.
Chris, we promise
Yes.
we're going to talk about this one. You're first up. But yeah, we'll put it off for one more week, and that'll be we'll come up with we'll talk about this and then come up with another question for you guys next week.
Women's basketball held their championship celebration event on Thursday the 27th, and unveiled a nice new banner outside Chaffetz Arena.
Yeah, it was cool. I mean, it's great that's they've got the big real estate now. The banner facing the highway, the A10 champion. What'd you think about the banner design itself? Would you have done anything differently?
Yeah, I had something to say about it. I love it. It's great, and I love that they are putting them front and center, but I don't know. It seems like you could have just left it at, because it says A10 champions and tournament, NCAA tournament appearance. I feel like NCAA tournament appearance isn't really like it's something to celebrate, but not in writing on a 30-foot banner. Well, I don't know. It just seems a lot more like you don't need to tell the public you had an NCAA tournament. The people driving on the highway don't really care. They understand champions, right? Everyone understands champions. NCAA tournament is just kind of icing on the cake, in my opinion. So I don't know. I just think it's kind of a design flaw too, visually.
Yeah, I think you want to make your banner about one thing or the other, right? If there's a lot of things to celebrate about what they did this season, but I think you leave it at A10 champs. You've got the trophy, you've got the players, you've got some action shots, some celebration shots. I don't think you need to make it two things at once. And I think most people who are going to pay attention to that and like that banner are kind of going to know that when you win your conference, you go to the tournament. already. So I don't know. I think, yeah, maybe they're trying to do a little too much on
Too
it,
much, yeah.
but regardless, it's cool, and they deserve the spot. They earned the spot, and you love seeing it out there. Overall, the design is nice. I like the look.
Yeah. You mentioned action shots, and NCAA tweeted out like a poll with action shots, and one of them is Brooke Flowers stuffing. It was a part like stuffing a Tennessee player, and like, not to be morbid, but if that was a picture of me like blocking like a future a future NBA player, comparatively speaking, like I would insist that be put on my grave. Like that photo embossed on the grave. Like, swear to God,
you would
like,
have it tattooed on your back.
yes.
I mean,
If that's not Brooke Flowers' Instagram profile picture for the next 70 years or whatever,
Yeah,
like
yeah.
I'm questioning.
It-
I'm
it-
questioning her.
it's her version of Chris Sloan's dunk on Channing Frye, where
Immortalized in the SLU commercial.
That's right. It's gotta. He's got to have posters of that somewhere.
Yes.
He
He hides it in like a little closet somewhere. He goes and holds vigil over it. Yeah, you do, Chris.
He
Yeah, you
probably
do.
plays the YouTube clip for his kids all the time. I'm sure. I'm sure.
Oh, I would. Oh, I 100% would.
Are you kidding me?
I'll give him shit for it all day, but I'll do the same damn thing.
That's right.
Let's talk a little hardball.
Yep.
8-5 win versus Western Illinois on the 25th, Pete.
Yeah, baseball had a little bit more of a mixed results week than softball did, but they at least got things going with this win. Western Illinois actually got out to a 5-0 lead after 3 innings, but SLU got 4 back in the 5th, tied it in the 7th, and then they scored 3 in the 8th to put it away. SLU had the bases loaded in the 8th, with the score tied at 5, and then Tyler Fogarty singled up the middle to break the tie and get things going. Cameron Swanger and Hayden Moore each had 2 hits and 2 RBIs. Ethan Sitzman had 2 hits and 2 runs. Caleb Thompson gave up 2 runs in 2 innings. And then Luke Gasser gave up the 3-run homer, but Jack Weber pitched 4 scoreless innings. And Evan Gray got the win. Ethan Bell got the save. You got to love how many guys actually get on the mound in a midweek game like this. And then, Zach, they headed out to VCU for a challenging series on the road this weekend.
Yeah, the MLB had a bit of a midweek game between the Padres and the Giants out there in Mexico City at altitude. 10-6 loss on Friday the 28th. This game was moved up to 3:30 Central Time to avoid the weather. SLU appeared to be in control of this one. A great outing by Henry Littman. 3 runs, 2 earned in 5 innings. He really did all he could in this one. He's been so good for the Billikens this year. The bullpen has to close this one out, Pete. The Bills scored 5 in the first 2 innings. VCU got 3 back. Then SLU scored again in the top of the 7th before the Rams scored 4 in the bottom of the inning and 3 insurance runs in the next. Closey and Redding both homered, with Closey and Hayden Moore each with 2 RBIs. SLU's 6 runs were scored by 6 different players. The Bills only had 4 hits. Evan Gray was a member of the bullpen that gave up the 4 runs in the 7th and got the loss. Fremion was on the mound for the last 3. So a tough day for the Billiken bullpen.
Yeah, but luckily they bounced back on Saturday, the 29th, flipped the score. It was a 10-5 win. SLU scored 4 in the top of the 2nd. VCU tied it in the following inning, but then SLU added 3 more in the 6th and 3 more in the 9th to seal it. Jack Weber threw 6 strong innings of relief to take the win. Everyone in SLU's lineup got at least 1 hit, with Swanger, Fogarty, Closey, and Moore getting 2 apiece. Swanger, Moore, and Newegg each had 2 RBIs, and then Swanger, Preston, and Smith all scored twice. Just a great team effort in this one to get the win. But unfortunately, Zach, the rubber match on Sunday did not go their way.
Yeah, this, I believe, was also on Saturday, though.
That's right.
They played the double
moved it.
dip, yeah.
Yep.
7-6 loss in 11. SLU out hit VCU 13-6, but had 3 errors, and those really cost them the game. They had a 6-3 lead, and VCU tied it in the bottom of the 7th. VCU loaded the bases in the 11th and singled home the walk-off run. Redding went 3 for 5 with 3 RBIs and a run. Fogarty was 3 for 6 with a run. Moore 2 for 4 with 2 RBIs and 2 runs. Holmes went 6 innings, gave up 3 earned runs. Again, the bullpen in this one just cannot shut the door. Jack Dumont pitched the last 3 innings and gave up the final run. He took the loss. With 10 regular season games to play, SLU is 26-16, 11-5 in the A10. Tied for second place with St. Joe's and just behind Davidson. Davidson has come on strong. They were a little slow out of the gate in the A10, but have really showed that they are again the class of the league. They will take on George Washington at home in a 3-game weekend series. GW a 500 team in conference, but 16-28 overall. Pete, women's and men's tennis finished out their season.
They did, and I got to give women's tennis credit for really outperforming my expectations. They were the 9 seed at the A10 championship in Orlando last week and had the 8 seed George Mason in the first round. They actually ran into George Mason in that event they played in Hilton Head Island earlier this season and lost a close one, but this time they worked them. 4-0 was the win. Elizabeth Mintusova moved to 26-2 in doubles play, tying a school record. Her partner was Senia Alashina. She also won in the 1 spot in singles, as did Nora and Hesham and Fiorella Duran in the 2 and 3 spots. Sandra Usegines and Maya Spencer won in their doubles match as well to make quick work of Mason. And then, Zach, they took VCU, the 1 seed in the tournament, all the way to the wire.
Yeah, a 4-3 loss versus the 1 seed VCU in the quarterfinals. VCU has won the last 4 A10 titles, but SLU made it about as close as possible, coming back from a 3-0 deficit to push the Rams to the brink. Mitasova broke the doubles record, winning her 27th match and her 21st with Alashina, her partner in this one. VCU won the other 2 doubles matches, though. VCU took number 3 in 6 singles, but Hesham won in the 2 spot and Spencer won in the 5. Mitasova came back to win at the number 1. Alashina's number 4 match went to a 3rd set tiebreaker, but she came up just short. SLU finished with 18 wins this season, second most in program history. Pete, our loyal follower, I say that like I'm a cult leader. Michael Gaines tweeted out that there is something weird going on in this athletic department kind of right now, where every sport but basketball is kind of just steadily doing well, like on an upward trajectory.
Since we started this show, I gotta say I do feel good about the direction of pretty much every program. I look at maybe field hockey is the one where it just seems like it's just a tough one to really get started and get off the ground. Other than that, I would say everybody is meeting or outperforming expectations in terms of where the program's been historically, in terms of what their resources are, in terms of facilities, all of that stuff. They're doing pretty well. So I give the athletic program a lot of credit for what they're doing in pretty much across the board. Gaines has been tough on the men's basketball program lately. So I think he was trying to draw any contrast possible, but if it means giving the women's tennis program credit for a good weekend, they certainly deserve it.
Absolutely. Men's tennis, not so much. SLU's a 3 seed at the A10 championships, also held in Orlando at the USTA National Campus. Same time, same Bob time, same Bob place. 4-1 loss versus 6 seed Dayton in the first round. This one was delayed for a long time due to rain, eventually moving it indoors to finish it off. Luca Leonardo won SLU's only number 5 singles. Ryota Fukushima and Thea Ortiz won at number 2 doubles. SLU finished 5-6 on the season.
15 and 6.
Oh, 15 and 6. Sorry, missed that one in there. Track and field, Pete. They had a they had a really nice weekend.
They did. The Kip Janvin Open and the Drake Relays, both up in Iowa. So they got to go to both. At the Janvin Open, they had a number of top 3 finishes and PRs, but the Drake Relays are really, that's the really prestigious event in track. And they did well. The men's sprint relay team set a new school record of 3:27.27. That's Will Stewart, Danny Hopkins, Malik Stewart, and Matt DeHaas. The women's 4x2 team set a new school record of 1:39.95 and finished 4th overall. That's Emily Nichols, Maddie Person, Jayla Robinson, and Michaela McDowell. And then Nichols also finished 5th in the 400 with a season best time of 55.87. So she had a great weekend. Madeline Rold had a PR in the javelin throw with 43.03 meters. So SLU showed up for that event. And I think had a pretty positive weekend overall, and it's good momentum heading into the A10 championships, which are May 6th and 7th up at UMass this season. So we'll be following along this weekend.
Couple of spring games for women's soccer. Started off with a 5-0 win versus McKendree. Wednesday, the 26th at Herman. Caroline Kelly had 2. Jamie, God, why didn't I give this to you? Because I cannot do this last name, Pete.
Deber Ardinas, I think.
Deber Ardinas had 1. Emily Piricelli and Becca Wolterman each got a half in this one. Dominating performances as it should.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, and then they got the 1-0 win against Illinois on Saturday, the 29th. This was their final spring game. And, they play a variety of programs. They tend to be regional games, but you really like to see kind of what they do against other power conference teams, right? So this was a good result, I think, even though it's not, a full-on midseason game or anything like that. The only goal was from Hannah Sawyer, cleaning up her own rebound. And unfortunately, she later had to be helped off the field with an injury. Hopefully nothing serious. It was a contact injury. It wasn't a non-contact thing. So, the early read on that would be that it's not the worst. So that's good. But hopefully that's the case, and that they're all right, because I know they've been dinged up by injuries all spring long, and we want to see them get back to 100% strength in the fall. And then they also had some recruiting news, Zach, that came through over the weekend. Ellen Nelson was added to the roster for this upcoming fall season. She's a forward out of Park Hill High School and Kansas City Scott Gallagher. And I think they may actually have room for 1 or 2 more if they wanted to for this next season. So we'll be keeping an eye on that as well. But as we always say, this conference goes through St. Louis until further notice.
Absolutely. Well, that does it for the week in Billiken Athletics. I really hope you enjoyed the Chris Harriman interview. Sorry, it's getting late. Follow us on Twitter at Midtown Mad Pod, at Peter is a Tweeter, at Zach Miller MMP, and on Instagram at Midtown Mad Pod. Thank you guys again so much for listening. If you have any suggestions you might have, if you have any suggestions, send them our way. Subscribe, rate, all that good stuff. As always, Pete, go Bills.
Go Bills.